Hello everyone. I know there's a lot of other videos out there about this already, so I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail, but I figured I'd give you a quick little tour of how I got to the space station, and a friend of mine and I worked together to build a ramp to get there. I waited until my base was pretty well established, and I set up bases on most of the other planets, and wanted to get all of those things done before attempting something like this. It's really not that hard, it just takes some time. Now, from this perspective of the base, you'll see that I've got a marker out there in the distance, and somewhere above that is where the space station is, and we built a base up there, and it's somewhere behind this cloud. And you can see a little bit of the ramp over here, but from this distance it doesn't completely render. But I'll make a quick run over here and give you a view of how this works. So now, one thing to keep in mind is that when you're building a ramp up towards the space station, this ramp is going to be very long. So when we started out with this, we tried to make it as flat as we could. But unfortunately, even though the ramp may be perfectly flat, what you'll notice is that as I get higher up, the angle towards the ground, because the planet is curved, the angle towards the ground changes, and so it starts to feel like you're getting steeper and steeper as you go up here, and it gets difficult to keep walking. Now we're going right through the clouds here, and we're still not even a good portion of the way toward it. However, since we were starting to get very steep here, we started to change the angle, and we set it a lot lower, and we knew that the space station was not at the correct angle here compared to where the ramp was aimed. And in fact, you can see this first habitation marker right here is for a base camp that we set up. And at the time, we thought we were a lot further along than we actually were. But you look up here, and that's actually the location that we're headed to, up there. So we had to keep adjusting our angle here several times on the way up, keeping in mind that the ramps will always start to feel steeper and steeper the higher we get. And so not only did we have to correct our aim left to right, but we also had to correct the angle of inclination. So I'm going to keep running here, and I'll show you exactly what we ended up doing. Now, on the way back down, it goes a little bit faster since you can ski down these slopes. That gets a little bit dangerous, so you'll notice that when we get into some of the curves or some of the changes in the width of the ramp, that I started putting up some barriers on the sides. From here, the station actually is really only visible as the pods themselves. You can see a little bit of the ramp leading up to it here. Again, it doesn't really render very well from very far away. But it's not long now before the station itself will actually start to come into view instead of just the pods. Very soon now. I'm going to try to keep it within frame here so that when it pops into view, you'll be able to see it. It should be before we get to this little side piece that's coming up ahead here, or soon after. Yeah, there we go. Right around here is when the station ring actually starts to become visible. Now, if I look back at where we are, you can see visibly it appears that we're well above the atmosphere at this point. You can see the curvature of the planet and all of these mountains below. However, it should be noted that even when we get all the way up to the space station, that if a storm starts raging below us, we can still be pelted by rocks, which is a little bit silly, but it's something we've had to watch out for. I actually did get killed by rocks up here at one point because I didn't have a place to duck to safety when one of the storms came by. Now we're going to get to one of the first major bends. Earlier on, when we passed through the cloud layer, you could see that we turned to the left a bit. One of the things that we were trying to do is make the ramps follow the angle of the triangles that are in the terrain to a certain degree. You'll notice here that there are some lines here that go straight forward relative to the ramp direction. We tried to follow these angles as best we could for a while. Once we got up into some of these altitudes, we started to give up on that. You'll notice that I put some large barriers here. This helps a lot when skiing down so that you don't just go sliding right off the edge of the ramp if you lose control of your speed. When going down, I'm usually a little more careful than that. And here we have a storm rolling in, so hopefully I won't get killed. But we'll watch out for that. as I continue on up. Yeah, you can see the storm is getting thick enough that we just lost sight of the sun. When it starts to get late in the day, the thing that started to really strike me is that when we get into the upper altitudes here, and here we go. We're being pelted from that direction, so I'll just use this as a barrier for a moment. But when you start getting up into these high altitudes, late in the day, the sun will pass down what should be below the horizon if we were actually standing on the surface. But you'll actually be able to look down at the sun past the planet, which is kind of a unique view that you don't normally get to see. I'm trying to see if the sun is still visible here somewhere, but I think the storm is still blocking it. Yeah, I'm not sure. Oh, there we are. That's one of the striking things with the storms, is you can completely lose sight of where the sun and the planets are. But you'll see it's still fairly high in the sky at the moment. But we're in the final stretch now. Running up this ramp. As we get towards the end here, what we did was we started to spiral up into the station itself. And we made the ramp fairly wide at times, just to make it a little easier on ourselves. And once again, another barrier here so that you can just kind of skip on through. But here's the station, the underside of it, and you'll see that we built this big platform overhead. It's because we went ahead and built a base. Now, one thing that's important to remember if you visit the space station like this is that the station is visible up close like this. However, it does not have a collision mesh at all, so you can actually walk through it. It's like a hologram. It doesn't prevent you from walking through it at all. So you have to be careful. If you build these ramps right up to it, it's easy to lose sight of yourself and walk off the edge and fall. So this is where the tethers started to run out a little bit, and we started to build a base here. And one of the things that we made sure to build is this vehicle bay, which does allow me to construct vehicles here, but also works well as a landing pad for bringing the shuttle up here. Once we got this constructed, we were able to get the shuttle back up here, and we brought a little bit of resources with us, but the shuttle is how we brought most of what we needed to build the rest of this. Now, as if you look over here onto the station, you can see the pods where all of the individual characters start out. You can see them in there just as you would at the main menu. And you can see the buttons up there too, and information about this particular save. Now, I've been warned by other people that pressing the buttons is bad, because apparently the interface still works. Even when you're up close to this, you can press your buttons and delete your save game, or you can load a different save, and from what I understand, that may corrupt the current one because it may not save properly on the way out. But we set up a source of fuel here so that we can refuel the shuttle before going back down. And I'll take a look over the edge, and you can see that we are pretty darn high. Now, of course, it's turned to night here, so you can't see the planet quite as well. I'm going to run over to the other side here a little bit. Look down past the station. We are extremely high up. And that's pretty much it. It just takes some time and some patience. We had to go up and down with lots of canisters many times in order to build these ramps. One of the things that was very useful for this is the fact that the canisters don't have to be attached to your tool. They can be in your pack and they'll still work just fine. So at times I was coming up here carrying 9 canisters at once, full of dirt, and we would excavate holes out in the caverns in order to fill up with dirt before coming back up and extending the ramp. So I'm going to start heading back down, and I'm going to try not to kill myself. So far I've been pretty successful at that, and you can see how much quicker it is to get back down. Since we spiraled up, I have to go around a few times here, but here's our first major turn, and then we'll start skiing. Now, usually what I'll do here is I'll have to adjust left to right a little bit, but I also put on the brakes so that I don't slam into things. If you're more adventurous than I am, you might actually let yourself go and ski through any barriers like that that you've built for yourself. It gets a little disconcerting because of the render distance. You'll see holes appear in the ramp, and it may look like you're about to fall right through the ramp, but you'll see it fill in right before you get to it usually. The other part of this that's absolutely terrifying is that when you get to the clouds, it will obscure your view of the ramp, and of course the clouds like to appear right around here where we have this first major turn and then the major drop off the ramp. Oop. Oh gosh, this one might kill me. I jumped really, really high. Ah, there we go. If you ski enough and jump, you can usually survive some of those falls. Now that we're back down here, I'm going to go take the shuttle real quick and show you what that looks like. I'll just grab the large shuttle since it's here and ready to go. Of course, the game likes to freeze a little bit here as we're doing a save game. It's gotten to be a fairly complex save because I've completely redesigned some of the caverns underneath this base, and it's a very elaborate base, plus I have bases on all of the other worlds. Alright, so we're going to lift off. And there's our perspective on the space station. If you look from here, you can see that the ramp becomes invisible. However, you can still see the location of the base, and it is selectable very high up off the surface of the planet. I'll click on that and go land at it. And there we are. It's as easy as that. Now, this is interesting. This is the first time I've seen it land at a strange angle. Usually the shuttle does a better job of figuring this out before it gets here. So what I'll do is I'll just quickly pop a little bit more fuel in. There we go. Start the machine up, hop back in, and go back down. And of course, luck would have it, I have to wait for the planet to go around before I can make it back down to my main base. But anyway, that is exactly what I wanted to show you. Just a quick tour of how the ramp was laid out and how we made it up to the space station, and maybe give you some ideas for giving it a try for yourself. Unfortunately, the hardest part of this is actually figuring out which direction to go and where the station is relative to your base on the ground. What worked for us is to be in a multiplayer session, and I watched as my friend departed the station to come down and join my game as a multiplayer. I was able to see where he appeared in the sky, and that gave us a direction to go. So it's not the easiest thing in the world. They didn't really design this for this to be the intent of what you're going to do, but it's just kind of a fun little activity to do when you've kind of run out of other things to try. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.